Seth, by the time when he was 8 years old, he told me it was the first time he saw his father hit his mother. And he hit her so hard that her eyes bled. You ever seen somebody get hit that hard? I haven't. Not yet. I hope I never do. It was the first time he saw his father hit his mother, and he'd hit her so hard that her eyes were bleeding. He was only 8 years old when this happened. His home was broken. His home was split up. There was no God. There was no church. There was no nothing. There was no relationship. There was no union. His home was a broken home. By the time he was 14, his parents split up. Seth was describing to me the kind of emotional turmoil that a young person faces under such circumstances. The loneliness, the sense of worthlessness, the sense of abandonment. And no matter how much he tried to hide it in public, he tried to act like he was cool, he tried to act like everything was all right, that it didn't matter. But deep inside, he was broken. And when nighttime came, he would toss and turn in his bed. There were nights that he spent awake, wondering what the problem was. At 14 years of age, his parents split up, and he decided he was going to move in with his mother because his dad was too strict. And so he moved in with his mother because she didn't really care what he did. And he went out into the world, and he began to do drugs, and he began to drink alcohol. He began to date girls here and date girls there. Every day, every week, every month, a different girlfriend. He thought he had it all. And then he realized that no matter how much drugs he used, and when I'm saying drugs, guys, I'm not talking about weed, although he did smoke weed. I'm talking about heavy chemicals. I'm talking about ecstasy. I'm talking about LSD, some crazy stuff. And he was out there, and he was using all this stuff, and he was still empty. He was still broken. None of it fixed it. There was a moment when the high would kick in, and all of a sudden all these wonderful colors would appear before him, and he felt like all the problems in the world were over, that everything was fixed, that everything was okay. And when that high would go down, the only thing that was left was a desire to vomit, a desire to kill himself. That sense that he was worthless, that sense that he meant nothing to nobody, and that he never would. And what happens in the life of a person when they experience that sensation is they begin to discover an interesting fact. And let me tell you guys a little something about sin. And I'm going to need a volunteer. Can you come up? I'm just going to use you real quick because I want to tell you guys just a brief explanation of how this works, okay? Let's pretend that Stephen, right? Yes. Stephen is a meter, okay? Here's 0 and here's 10, all right? 0 is his waist, 10 is his collarbone. 0 means neutral. And I'm talking about, this is a happiness meter, all right? So you got to smile. You're the happiness meter, okay? 0 is neutral. That's when you're not happy, but you're not sad. You just sort of, you're okay, 10 is you're really happy. God created us with this meter. He wants us to be happy, to feel good. And then at times, he wants us to be very happy. When you see a sunset, when you eat something really good, when you hang out with somebody that you love, you experience the very happy level. What Satan does when he invites you into his world is he tells you, listen, you're on 0, you're on neutral. You can only get up to 10. I'm going to take you to 30. I'm going to let you experience emotions and joy and happiness you've never experienced before. But what he doesn't tell you is that when you climb way up here where God never meant for you to be, when you drop, you don't stop at neutral. You go below. And all of a sudden you're depressed. And all of a sudden you feel worthless. And all of a sudden you feel like something's wrong in your life. And in order to fix the way that you feel, you commit the same sin again. Only the second time, you don't go quite as high. And so you realize that when you commit that sin, you need to commit it 2 times worse than you did the time before in order to get the same experience. And you keep going up and you keep dropping lower. And you keep going up and you keep dropping lower. And beloved, there comes a time where you're so low that you are using that drug, you are drinking that drink just to get to neutral. And when you're at that position, you are a slave. You are in bondage. You can't escape. You can't just say, you know what, I don't feel like drinking anymore, I'm done. You can't just say, you know what, forget this drug, I'm done. You are completely at the mercy of the devil. And no matter how hard you try and no matter what you do, you cannot break free. He's got you gripped with iron chains. And the only one that can set you free at this point is Jesus. But don't wait till you get to that point. Thank you very much, bro. You were a great happiness meter. And so, this rich young ruler, he didn't do any of the sinful stuff, but he had come to that experience where no matter what he did, he was always on neutral. He could never be happy. What he didn't realize was he was missing the only thing in the universe that could make him experience real joy. And that is Jesus. And I believe that the church, for the most part, has done a great job with teaching the young people how to keep the law. That's beautiful. We have to teach that. We've done a great job with teaching them how to be people of respect, how to have morals, how to do good in life, and that's beautiful. But I believe that we failed when it comes to teaching them how to walk with Jesus. Because when you walk with Jesus, all of a sudden all those rules begin to make sense. They begin to become beautiful. They begin to become something special. No longer are they some burden that you have to carry. Oh, I can't wait till Sabbath is over so I can go to the corner store, get myself a drink. I can't wait till Sabbath is over so that I can play soccer, so I can go to the movies or do whatever it is you do after Sabbath. When you're in love with Jesus, man, let me tell you, I live for the Sabbath. I love that day. Let me tell you, when I open the Bible to read it, it's not boring like it used to be. It's greater than a Hollywood movie. When I kneel down to pray, it's not some monotonous conversation with some guy way up there. It's a love conversation with Jesus who's standing right next to me. Beloved, when you experience that, and until you experience that, you will always ask yourself, what am I missing? And so Seth was in this predicament. He didn't know what he was missing. 21 years old, he was $95,000 in debt, using drugs, drinking alcohol, running around, living the life. Bars, clubs, everything, you can name it. But he was still not happy. A day came when he met a young girl who invited him to come to church. She said, you know, let's go to church together. And they would go to church together, and then after church, they would go and get high. And his life just continued to spiral downhill, further and further and further. Until one day that girl decided, she was his girlfriend at the time, she decided, you know what, I'm going to give my life to Jesus. She had an experience that rocked her world. But Seth wasn't ready to take that step. He didn't want to take that step. But he realized that he had come to a point in his life where he had burned all of his bridges. He had nowhere left to go. He was out on the streets. He had no one to turn to. He had no one to talk to. He had no relationship with his family, with his parents. His relationship with this girl that was probably the only good thing in his life, he had ruined it through his lifestyle, through his immorality, through his drugs, through all his addictions. He had nowhere left to go, and he decided, you know what, I think I'm about to hit rock bottom. I need to make a change. I need to maybe give God a try. And he began to entertain the fact that maybe God was what he was missing. But it wasn't that easy. He decided, you know what, I'm going to follow God, so I'm going to quit doing drugs. But he couldn't deal with the withdrawal symptoms when you quit drugs. And he said one day he was at work and he was desperate. He was sweating. He was shaking. He didn't know what to do. And so he picked up his phone to call a friend of his to say, listen, man, I need some stuff. Just bring it down here. I'll pay you. I got to get high. But every time he picked up the phone to call, it would hang up. And he picked it up again to call, and it would hang up. And he picked it up again to call, and it would hang up. And he was desperate, and he was in the place where he worked at. He used to work at a Domino's Pizza. It wasn't open yet. He was the only one there, and he was shaking. He was sweating. He was crying. And he said all of a sudden, this woman walked in. It was an older black lady. And she just walked in, and she looked at him, and she said, what's going on? And he couldn't even speak. And he said she put her arm around him and began to sing hymns. And he told me to this day, he was like, man, to this day, I believe that woman was an angel, because when she started singing, I could feel all the burden lifted from me. And he decided, you know what, I've got to give God a try. I've got to have an experience. I need to give it all up to him. And that day, he marked an encounter with God. that would change his life. And when that encounter was over,